From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every podcast. Is Andre Johnson.
Jr.
Do not forget the Jr. It's very important to remember the JR. Before we get into today's content, be sure to like, share, rate, and review if you are watching us on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, get the bell notification when we drop that fire content. And also, hello, Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. We are glad you have found us here on this network. All right, speaking of fire content, we got another banger today because we got a lot of news to get to with a lot of prominent people, and it's going to be a fun topic. I think you know which way we're going to go with the big picture, but before we get into that, hey, Victory Monday in the city of New Orleans. You got your black and gold on? How about that?
I don't know how much of a Victory Monday it feels like considering how the game ended, but you know what? Ugly wins are better than pretty losses is what they say.
Ugly victory over moral victory any day of the week. And I can promise you, one Darren Rizzy is counting that as a win.
Yeah.
It was not a good performance, but they still outplayed the Giants, who were bad, very bad. They still never trailed. So they deserved it, as ugly as it was. But I'm going to be honest with you, I had to watch the game here. We didn't make the trip. There was some times, I caught myself kind of rocking back. Like, oh my God, I got to get myself into this because it was boring for a few minutes there, a few quarters there. But in the fourth quarter, things got a little spicy, and Derek Carr, quarterback, decides to. Well, before we get to that, how you feeling today?
Well, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. Juan Kincaid, our sports director, owed me a Blue Oak chicken sandwich, so. Got a lunch bet from him.
All right, so he paid his debt.
Yeah.
All right, that's good. That's good as I take a swig of my Gatorade here. All right, so Derek Carr runs around the end, and it was a second down play. Not getting enough credit for the move he made to kind of get around that defender, and he's trucking, going down the sideline. He can move. It's not like he's a stiff. He can move. Then at the end, he decided to go airborne with a guy that was standing up. Like, I can respect the effort and kind of laying it all out on the line for your guys, but obviously he gets high, comes down, and lands on his hand awkwardly and kind of, face plants. I thought that was the bigger concern, honestly. And he's in concussion protocol, but also there is a left hand injury. Rizzy didn't get specific. There's been reports of a fracture. There's a second opinion happening. What we do know is initial reports of it being season ending may be premature, but there's a chance he can't go. There's a chance he can't go, and that is obviously where we're going to go with the big picture today. Not just him not going, but who could be next up to replace him.
Right. I feel like we've stepped in a time machine and went back a few weeks ago because I'm having deja vu. Because if Derek Carr can't go, that means we have to talk about the two guys who can go next week against the Washington Commanders, and that would be either Jake Haener and Spencer Rattler. I thought we put the Haener versus Rattler debate in the rearview mirror, but with the Carr injury, we now revisit it. The first time around when Carr was injured, the Saints decided to go with Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler in 3 games, 571 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 3 turnovers, and he eventually got benched against the Chargers.
Correct.
In a game that Jake Haener would finish. This time around, Sean, are you rolling back with Rattler, or are you giving Jake Haener a chance?
All right. This is going to be a good one today. This is going to be a good one because we're going to get a lot of comments, because if there's one thing I like to talk about, it's quarterbacks. One y'all hate, one y'all love, and this has got it all right here because it's Derek Carr, it's Jake Haener, and it's Spencer Rattler, who a lot of people are still very, very high on. First off, look, I don't think it's going to happen, but the hope, or perhaps organizationally, maybe there's some optimism that it's Derek Carr. I don't know about this week, but not season ending. We'll see how that goes. A fractured hand, if that is indeed the case, is a fractured hand right now, does not need surgery. He gives him the best chance to win by a mile. We've all understood this. We all know this. We all understand. We all watched it play out in the games he was not available versus the games he was available. The 10 that he did play versus the 3 he did not. Not even a question. I have zero doubt Derek Carr wants to play, even if he can't go this week. No, he will want to play because there's a team coming to town in a couple of weeks that I can guarantee you he's going to want to be suited up for and ready to play. I'll let you guys think about that in a couple weeks who they play and who might have a connection to Derek Carr. And it'll be interesting to see. This is where it kind of gets laid out. And I think this is the out Rizzy was giving himself before getting into the absolutes. It'll be interesting to see how close to 100% Carr has to be to get rolling. For instance, if he's 75%, if he's 80%, is that better than 100% Haener or 100% Spencer Rattler? Where is the line for that? I think that's certainly something to monitor. Look, if you got an 85% Carr, I think that's worth it. But if we're talking about not being able to use one hand, it's probably not going to get close to 85%. I'm sure it will have a lot to do with the functionality and what he can realistically do, or what they can realistically do, or perhaps more importantly, what they cannot do without full use of both hands of Derek Carr. Pain tolerance is certainly one thing, and then there's obviously functionality. Interesting, Rizzy said today, there could be a scenario where one guy practices all week, gets all the reps, but on game day, maybe they can make it work with Carr, and if that would be the case, they turn to Carr. That's how much they understand they need Derek Carr to play. But back to the big picture, Rattler or Haener? Who you going with? Leave your comments below. So back in October, we talked. We had our discussions. We went with it. We felt like a certain way. And honestly, at the end of it all, I really didn't have a problem with them going with Spencer Rattler back in October. Neither guy had really differentiated himself. And given the preseason, there were some traits that Haener had. There were some other traits that Rattler had that provided both some intrigue and, more importantly, some upside. A little more of an explosive element, if you will. And truth be told, when it's all said and done, Rattler may end up being the better overall player than Jake Haener by the time their careers come and go. Now, I know a lot of you watching right now, a lot of you listening to us right now. If you were to ask, who would they want to go with?
I heard a lot of rat dats earlier this season, a lot of QB1s in the comments for Spencer Rattler. I'm sure some of those people have hopped off the bandwagon, but I have a feeling there's still a lot of those people that are
I still think it's Team Rattler in the fan base right now. And because of that explosive element, that intrigue, he's a name. So I think you guys think that are on Team Rattler feel like that for that reason alone, it should go to Rattler. But I am not with the fan base on this one. I have thought a lot about this since the injury. We've kind of looked at some things. We've studied some things. I simply cannot go that way. Not this time around. You're in December now. You're 5-8 now, because where they currently are is more important than where they potentially could be, the two players I'm talking about. That's why if I were making the call, it would be Jake Haener this time around. Yes, Rattler has some intriguing traits. We all saw him. There were a couple of moments there, especially in that first half of the Tampa game. But in those 3 games, you look at the big picture, the totality of those big games, those 3 games that I watched, I saw a rookie struggling with the speed of the game. Totally natural. It happens. But he struggled with the speed of the game, which impacted his decision-making and led to some pretty bad offensive football. I know we go week to week like this, so sometimes it's hard to go back and watch or to even remember, but I remember using the term preseason football, preseason offense at one point with Spencer Rattler at the helm, at quarterback. Yes, they were short on weapons, and yes, they were short on protection, and all that is valid, absolutely very valid, something they'll still have to deal with, perhaps even more. This week and beyond. But as for Haener, doesn't quite have the physical traits as a Rattler. But let me just clarify something here. It's not like if you label the physical traits of Rattler and Haener, Rattler's like a 10 and Haener is like a 4. It's not that big of a gap when it comes to physical traits. Yes, Rattler has a bigger arm, and I don't know from a mobility standpoint, they can both move. Maybe Rattler runs a little bit faster, or maybe he's a little bit better scrambler. But there really isn't a crazy, ocean of difference between their pure physical ability. Bottom line for me, as they stand right now, I would trust Haener more in executing the overall offense from a down-to-down consistency standpoint, something they clearly do as well, because if they didn't, they wouldn't have kept Haener as the number 2 quarterback once Carr came back in the game and dropped Rattler all the way back to number 3. And I know game day 2 versus preparing that player to be a starter isn't always the same thing. Heck, we saw it. We saw it back in October. We saw it. Sometimes preparing for a guy just gives you a better chance to win. That's why Rattler jumped him from 3 to 1. But there's also this. Darren Rizzy needs to win. If he wants this job, Darren Rizzy needs to win. So this idea about let's see what we have for our future doesn't hold water this time around because that future may very well not include Darren Rizzy. So unless he gets overruled, Darren Rizzy has to worry about the present day. In fact, hindsight 2020 here, but it's fair to ask, had they went with Haener for just one of those 3 games or maybe the entire 3-game stretch, whatever it is, if they could have possibly done just enough to eke out a win in that 3-game stretch, which was an important stretch in that 7-game losing streak. It's also a long shot, but they still do have an outside shot at the playoffs. It has to be more about today and less about tomorrow. And I think today, from his processing standpoint, his understanding of the offense, his down and down, just a little bit more consistency, I think he is the guy you have to turn to in this very short-term situation. However, given this offensive coaching staff's desire to go with Rattler the first time around, that approach must not be laughed off because I still think there's a very strong chance Rattler could become the starter this week and possibly beyond, depending on how banged up Derek Carr truly is. So that's a long way of me saying, if it were up to me, I'd go with Jake Haener. What say you?
This was not a difficult decision for me because the first time around, I felt like Jake Haener should have gotten the nod over Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler was pretty underwhelming in those 3 starts that he made. So now the second time around, a few months later, I think that you go with Haener. Now, with that being said, obviously, like you said, Darren Rizzy is essentially fighting for his head coaching life, his head coaching career. And to do that, he's got to win games. And he won the Giants game, but I don't know if he did a lot to help himself with the way that they did win the Giants game. So whether you like Derek Carr or not, you got to admit they have a better chance winning games with Carr than they do with Rattler and Haener. So Rizzy's going to do whatever he can do to get Carr out there if it makes sense health-wise. But if Carr can't go, I think you got to go with Haener just because we've seen what Rattler went through. And by the way, when Spencer Rattler played, Spencer Rattler got to play with Chris Olave. He got to play with Taysom Hill. He got to play with Rashid Shaheed. He even had Bub Means for a while.
Right.
Like Spencer Rattler, there were some injuries going on during his time as well, but Spencer Rattler did get some of the starters, and he still looked offensively inept in the second half against Tampa and the entire game against the Denver Broncos.
That game was so ugly.
It was painful to watch.
Yeah.
And then the game against the Chargers where he eventually got benched. Now, let me be clear. I think let's just say you're going to be going up a very uphill hill trying to win the Commanders game with either Rattler or Haener.
No doubt.
I don't think you win this game with either backup quarterback, but I think Jake Haener's the guy you got to send out there. He has been your backup. Ever since Rattler got sent back to the bench because Derek Carr came back, he's been the emergency 3rd quarterback.
Right.
He's been on the inactive list every week. Jake Haener's been quarterback number 2. And just simply, if you think about evaluation, we have evaluated Spencer Rattler. He got his chance. We saw him. He had 90% of the first-team reps during the week when he was starting. Jake Haener, while he did play against the Chargers, it was a week where Rattler got all of the first-team reps.
Yeah.
So I would like to see what Jake Haener looks like if he can have a week getting the first-team reps and if he can go out there and start a game in which he was meant to be the starter. Does he play great football? Who knows? Does he win against the Commanders, a playoff caliber team? Probably not. But I think the Saints owe it to themselves to at least see what you have with Jake Haener, because I think it's a slap in the face to Haener if for the second time this season I'm the QB2, but when it's time for me to step up and be QB1, I get leapfrogged by a rookie?
That has to matter. First and foremost, what's going to make the biggest difference is when you break down the Washington Commanders and who you have available at quarterback, who gives this team the best chance to win. I have no doubt they're going to do, their due diligence in that regard. But you might be able to get away with that the first time around with bypassing the game day number 2 to go with number 3. He jumps 2 and becomes number 1, then grows back to 3. I don't think you could do that a second time around. I don't think that would cause an issue in the locker room, but that's still not optics. That's not necessarily the best look. Now, look, optics, they got to win a game. I've already made that very clear. Darren Rizzy has to win this game. So I think they're going to do it based truly on who gives them the best opportunity to win. But that really, if they turn to Rattler again, if you're Jake Haener, you'd probably be a professional. You probably play the season out. But I mean, at some point, maybe are you maybe questioning your future with this franchise if you want to be here, or do they want me here, or am I ever going to get my opportunity here? Because am I good enough to be the game day too? Which means if Derek Carr goes down in middle of the first quarter, I'm basically playing the entire game. But when you got to practice with me and get me ready to go, you feel like there's a better option. That would probably not sit, it definitely wouldn't sit well with me if I were Haener.
Yeah.
I just wonder if there's other people observing and watching the situation that have obviously played with Rattler and Haener and saw what Rattler did those 3 games. If that doesn't at least get that doesn't really look too good type vibe as well. So you and I are in agreement. To me, it's a fairly easy call just because what we saw with Rattler versus what we haven't seen with Haener yet, and give him the immediate need to get a win in this situation. I think Jake Haener should be the guy. Now, what do you think? Because I don't know if it's a slam dunk, because you made the point last pod when we talked about Clint Kubiak. This was the guy Clint Kubiak targeted and drafted Rattler. They didn't draft Jake Haener. So and then the head coach that drafted Jake Haener, I guess from the year before that, is now gone. I don't know where they stand with that. So to me, this is a very unique situation because they really do like both guys. And you've been given the opportunity to kind of show that by, okay, this guy got 3 games. Now this guy can get a couple of games with Jake Haener. So you can kind of even things out and give each person their fair opportunity. And if Haener is denied that opportunity, oh man, I just don't know if that's going to look good.
Yeah, because ultimately Rattler is Clint Kubiak's guy. Clint Kubiak is the guy who drafted him. Clint Kubiak is the guy that I'm sure had a major role in having Rattler skip up the depth chart and start when Derek Carr went down the first time.
Yeah.
Spencer Rattler, in a way, is tied to Clint Kubiak. And I'll say this, if Clint Kubiak, again, and this is what's going on behind the scenes, we don't know 100%. Let's say Clint Kubiak once again says, hey, I think Rattler learned from being on the bench. I want to go with Rattler again.
There could always be that, right?
Think about Bryce Young. Bryce Young came out the first 2 games of the season. He was absolutely horrible. He sat behind Andy Dalton for a while. He came back, and Bryce Young has been playing good football. He went blow for blow with the Chiefs and the Eagles in the last month, and the Tampa Bay Bucks. So maybe Clint Kubiak says, hey, Spencer Rattler's been sitting. He's learned a lot. I like what I've seen from him in the scout team. We should start Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler goes out there and stinks it up again. After Kubiak vouches for him and skips him up the depth chart one more time, essentially stiff-arming Haener out of the way, it's not a good look on Clint Kubiak.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing you bring up because I could see that being a thought process. No, all right, yeah, he struggled, but he was a rookie, and now he's got a chance to play, sit back, see what he did wrong. He's going to be better this time around, no doubt about it. I can understand that line of thinking. I really can, but I still think you probably owe it to the team to start Haener just to see what he has. And even if it's a horrible experience, at least all it would have to be would be 1 game. If you want to go back to Rattler after that situation, I think everything would be fine. But I think in this scenario, I think Haener's kind of earned it. Yeah. And it's not to say Rattler hasn't, but I just think there is some. If they didn't have 2 very young quarterbacks, it would be a much easier call to make. But because they had such a good training camp, they had such a good preseason, and they've been trying to keep both guys active by splitting the show team reps and scout team reps and trying to do as much as they can to keep them active. And you got the 3-game window at Rattler. It's only fair to give Haener a sample size as well. But we all know fair ain't no such thing as fair in the NFL.
Exactly.
It's either who gives me the best chance to win. So and if the coaching staff, offensive coaching staff, naturally favors Rattler because he was their guy that they drafted, that cannot be discounted in this situation.
Absolutely. And I mean, NFL, not fair league, if you want to say that's what it stands for. And at the end of the day, I think Jake Haener, and we've said it, We saw it during the preseason. Spencer Rattler probably had a few more highs during the preseason, but you guys were in California with them for training camp. And Jake Haener really had the edge for training camp. And overall, when it comes to practice, Jake Haener has been a practice warrior. But at some point,
no, absolutely.
If you're the Saints, even if the upper brass, if you're Mickey Loomis and everybody, and you're looking at your quarterback situation, you know Derek Carr is not your quarterback of the future. You know that one day you're probably going to have to go draft a quarterback of the future. But hypothetically, if you think your quarterback of the future is on this roster, you've got to evaluate them. You've got to give them live reps, live bullets. And Jake Haener, since he's been here, has not truly had an opportunity to get that. He's played in the preseason, but he hasn't really started a regular season game. He's filled in every now and then, handed the ball off a few times, maybe gotten a quick play action. But Jake Haener hasn't been in a situation where he can get all of the first-team reps, start, really sit in those meetings. They're game planning for what Jake Haener does well, not what Derek Carr does well, and then fill in Jake Haener, get in where you fit in for what Jake Haener can do with this team. I think as the Saints, you have a responsibility to at least see what it looks like. If it looks great, maybe we stumbled upon something. If it doesn't,
all bets are off.
You're in the same place you already were.
Right.
You're looking at the draft in April. So I think you don't lose anything by starting Haener.
And if I'm Rizzy and I'm the coaching staff and I thought enough for this guy to make him the 2,
right?
Isn't there just a sheer basic element of curiosity of how this guy would do in a game? I just want to see how he's going to do in a game. I mean, and how much does that count? How much does that factor in? Especially since we saw the 3-game sample size from the guy we started the last time. So all kind of different factors. I believe Rizzy when he said today they weren't sure which way they were going, because Rizzy is not the guy to hold back secrets. Rizzy's a guy, you get him going, he generally reveals the information that he wants to reveal and that he has, and something as big as who they prefer going forward as starting quarterback. Not unlike Dennis Allen did when he came out the first practice after it was clear it's going to be Rattler or Haener. First thing he said in his press conference, we're going with Spencer Rattler. So we'll see how quickly that decision gets made this week, because they got to get started soon, because they start practice Wednesday and they got to get all the practice reps in. And like it should be noted, he said that it's a situation where if Carr could not practice all week and then play on Sunday, but that guy has to get the practice reps this week. So Haener or Rattler, keep your ears open and your eyes open to see which one they could potentially go with this week. But I think you and I are in agreement. It should be Haener's opportunity this time around. Do we have any questions?
We do. We've got one from Cheryl from New Orleans. She wants to know, and a very valid question, by the way, if the Saints couldn't stop Drew Lock from running all over them yesterday in New York, how on earth are we supposed to stop Jaden Daniels on Sunday in the Dome?
Well, this is a game you go in with, okay, this guy's a scrambling quarterback. I got to be honest, I was a little surprised at how well Drew Lock ran. I don't remember him being that athletic when he was with Denver, and obviously the little time he had in Seattle where he didn't even win the job. It was Geno Smith's job. So he was faster than I thought. I mean, that 4th and long, he turned that corner. I mean, he really can run. I mean, he's got some speed, long stride speed. So I wonder if maybe that caught them off guard a little bit. They're not going to catch Jaden Daniels. They're not getting caught off guard with that. And I would not be surprised if this is a Willie Gay game. This is a game where he played that spiral so much with Kansas City because they played Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and those guys. So I would not be surprised in the least if this is a game where Willie Gay is on the field a lot for no other reason other than to spy Jaden Daniels. But they got a tough task ahead, especially if they don't have their own starting quarterback playing on Sunday.
Yeah, I don't think that, especially if they have to play a backup, this isn't a game where your offense is giving you 30 points.
Right.
This may not be a game where your offense can even give you 20 points. If you're going to have a chance of winning the game against the Washington Commanders, it's going to be because the defense stepped up and made Jaden Daniels look like a rookie. Jaden Daniels, by the way, in a place where he is very familiar with, in Louisiana, an hour away from where he won a Heisman at LSU. So I think you're really going to need the defense to step up. Now, Drew Lock, he had a good running outing against the Cowboys the week before they played the Saints. Drew Lock played even better against the Saints on the ground. The Saints haven't shown me anything this year to make me believe that they can stop a quarterback with the physical attributes of Jaden Daniels. But like you said, that is why they brought in Willie Gay. Willie Gay, that contract you signed, I think, what was it, 1 year, $5 million?
Yeah.
It's time for you to earn your $5 million because they're going to need you.
Yeah.
This is why you're here.
This is why he's here. I mean, this is why you're here, to play against mobile quarterbacks. And it's been kind of a quiet year for Willie Gay, but this is an opportunity for him to maybe step up and make some plays. Any other questions?
This one from our guy Chuck Thoe out in Ponchatoula. Can a team rebuild when they're consistently way over the salary cap to start the year? Next year, the Saints projected to be about $60 million over the cap.
Yeah, and we'll see what the actual number is going to be. We have a minute and a half left here. We'll see what the actual number is going to end up being. The projections are what the projections are, but a lot of times they come in higher. So maybe they're not quite as over the cap, but it's still they're over, and it's still going to lead the league in overages. Yes, they can. Here's why. You've got to rethink your trade-up approach in the draft. Understand that you need a big group of young, hungry, inexpensive players on rookie contracts, and that's how you rebuild. So this year, you need to scrap the trade-up approach, try to get a bigger draft class, and just hit on those draft picks. That is the best way, not the easiest way, but that's the most effective way to do that. You're not going to do that by buying a bunch of free agents again because you're not going to have the money to spend, but also you've been tied up too long with restructures. The only way to get out of it, a lot of young, inexpensive talent coming in, making plays.
Yes, you can, but I don't think that this is going to be something that happens overnight. This is going to be a long process. This isn't going to be like 2017 where you have a great draft and all of a sudden you're right back in the NFL Super Bowl picture. This is going to be a long, painful rebuild because there's not just one or two spots on this team you need to fix or address.
Big class.
You probably got to address every single position, and that's going to take a few years.
Hope that answered your question because, it's going to take some time and just undoing some of those salary cap restraints doesn't happen overnight. But I think the best way to do it, get a big group of very talented young players that are on rookie deals. So hope that answered your question. Anyway, for Andre Johnson Jr., I am Sean Fazende. That'll do it for us. We will catch you guys next time on Overtime.